The hallway no one noticed that morning had just begun, and the headquarters of one of the world's most powerful tech companies was already alive with movement. Floors buzzed with coffee machines, people in suits strolled briskly past glass walls, and keyboards clicked like 1,000 little heartbeats in sync. But on the ground level below the elegant floors, the designer meeting rooms, and the executive lounges, there was another world, one quieter, humbler, forgotten dot near the service corridor behind the loading bay. Under flickering lights and the hum of a vending machine, a woman named Lena stood carefully unpacking her lunch bag. Her hands moved slowly, deliberately. Beside her, sitting on a plastic crate too small to be a chair and too stained to be clean, was a little boy no older than 7. His shirt was 2 sizes too big, and his shoes had holes in the sides. But his eyes? They carried the kind of light that made people stop and wonder. Lena handed the boy half of a peanut butter sandwich. The crust cut off. She didn't eat any herself. Instead, she sipped from a lukewarm bottle of water and smiled at her son like he was the richest child in the world. The boy, Liam, looked up. "Mama, are you gonna eat the other half later?" Lena hesitated, then nodded. "Mama's? Just not hungry yet." Liam smiled and took a bite, not realizing that Lena had given him the only food she had for the day. Nomen, quiet and hidden behind concrete walls and janitorial lockers, would have passed unnoticed like hundreds before, except this time. Someone was watching. Sundar Pichai wasn't supposed to be there. He had arrived unusually early that morning. No meetings, no interviews, just one quiet walk through the building. He called it his human loop, a personal tradition. Once every few months, he'd walk the lesser-used routes of the building to remind himself that innovation was built by people, not just PowerPoints. He often did it in silence, with no entourage, no badge, no suit. Just a hoodie and old sneakers, so no one would recognize him as he turned a corner behind the loading area. His eyes caught something that made him stop mid-dash step. That it wasn't the sandwich or the boy. It was Lena. He had seen her before, perhaps, once or twice while walking past the early cleaning crew. Always quiet, always in the background. But this time, she wasn't sweeping or mopping. She was just being a mother, and something about that struck him hard. The way she leaned forward, placing the sandwich into the boy's hand with such care. The way her back curved slightly, her shoulders worn from years of work, yet still holding strength. The way she tucked her apron behind her knees so she could kneel properly, not get it dirty. That small act of love. It wasn't performance. It was survival. Quiet, consistent survival. Sundar stood there frozen. Not out of pity, but something deeper. Something that whispered, "This is what resilience really looks like." He took a few silent steps forward, not wanting to interrupt, not wanting to make it awkward. But Liam noticed him. The boy tilted his head. "Are you lost, mister?" Lena turned quickly, startled. She stood up fast, brushing crumbs off her apron. "I'm sorry, sir. This is the service hallway. Employees aren't allowed to..." "I know," Sundar interrupted gently. "I was just walking." His voice was calm, almost apologetic. "I didn't mean to intrude." Lena looked flustered. "I'm really sorry. I was just giving him breakfast." "Before school, I'll take him out now." "No, please don't," Sundar said, raising a hand. "He should finish eating. This place, it's just as much yours as anyone's." Lena blinked, unsure whether he was being kind or sarcastic. She didn't recognize him without the suit and title. Just another man in a hoodie, talking like, "You own the place." Liam looked at Sundar with curious eyes. "What's your job here?" "I help build things," Sundar replied softly. The boy smiled. "My mom cleans things." "Then your mom and I both take care of this place," Sundar said, nodding, just in different ways. Lena gave a weak smile, still unsure how to respond. She glanced at the wall clock. "We need to go. I'm late for my next shift." "And he needs to catch the school bus." Sundar stepped aside. "Of course." But something about the moment stuck with him, not just the kindness in Lena's face, or the innocence in Liam's voice. It was the sandwich. The way Lena hadn't taken a single bite. How her eyes lingered on her son's crumbs like they were gold dust dot upstairs. Everything looked normal. Executives greeted each other with nods. Coffee orders floated in the air, and screens flashed presentations about quarterly goals. But Sundar couldn't focus. He sat at his desk, staring at his screen, his mind replaying one image, a mother feeding her son with all the love in the world. Even if it meant going hungry, he opened a document to draft a new idea for the company's internal innovation grant. But his fingers paused. What if the next innovation wasn't a product? What if it was a person? A story? He closed the document and opened another. This time, he began to type something different, something bigger. He didn't yet know where it would lead, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to forget Lena. Or Liam. Not this time. Later that day, Lena returned to her tiny break room. A space barely the size of a closet with mismatched chairs and a vending machine that barely worked. She sat down, exhausted, her hands sore from scrubbing office tiles. All day. One of the younger janitors, Maria, looked at her. "You okay, Lena?" "Yeah," Lena whispered. "Just tired. You were gone a little longer this morning." "Everything all right?" Lena nodded. "Just ran into a strange man." "Kind, but strange. What did he want?" "Nothing," she said. "Just watched me feed Liam." Maria laughed. Maybe he was one of those wellness people, always walking around talking about mindfulness and gratitude. "Maybe," Lena whispered. But something in her heart said otherwise. She didn't know that the man she spoke to was the CEO. She didn't know he had watched her sacrifice her own meal. She didn't know that in that single morning, her name had been scribbled into a notebook at the highest level of the company, not as a problem, not as a number, but as a spark that was about to change everything. That night, Lena returned home to her small one-bedroom apartment. The walls were cracked. The heater barely worked. But it was home. Liam sat on the floor, doing homework with a broken pencil. She warmed a can of soup on the stove and stirred it slowly. Half would go to Liam. The other half, if he didn't finish, she'd eat. But her eyes kept drifting to the memory of that man. The way he had looked at her, not with judgment, not with pity, but with respect. She hadn't felt that in a long time. As she sat beside Liam and helped him spell out long words from his school book. Her heart felt a little lighter, but miles away, inside a glass tower that touched the sky, Sundar Pichai stared at a whiteboard full of bold letters and sticky notes. A quiet idea was growing in his mind, one that had nothing to do with stock prices or market trends. He had seen something pure that morning, something humbling, and he knew it was time to do something about it. He just didn't know how much it would change the lives of everyone around him. Not yet, but very soon. He would asterisk whispers in the cafeteria next morning. Lena arrived earlier than usual, her work shoes soaked from walking through wet pavement. The sky still wore a blanket of gray clouds, and the streets of the city hadn't yet shaken off the silence of night. She had barely slept. Thoughts of the man in the hoodie wouldn't leave her mind. There was something about him. Not just his words, but the way he had looked at her as if she mattered. Not like the managers who walked past her as if she was invisible. Not like the passers-by who talked louder when she mopped near them. Not like the world, which had grown used to looking through her. She pushed open the side door of the building, clocked in, and walked into the janitorial closet to collect her supplies. Mop, gloves, sanitizing bucket. Same old routine. Same weight on her shoulders. But today, a question clung to her chest like a secret. Who was that man? Upstairs, Sundar Pichai sat in the executive conference room. But he wasn't listening to the report being read. Charts and statistics floated by like fog. His mind kept returning to Lena. He had seen hundreds of team members in that building, brilliant engineers, designers, coders. But that morning with Lena had left a deeper mark than any award presentation ever had. He didn't want to forget. And he didn't want the company to forget either. So he wrote 3 words on a sticky note and placed it beside his laptop. Start with people. He then opened his personal notebook, the one he never let assistants touch. He turned to a blank page and began writing ideas. Not ideas for a new product, not algorithms, not business models. People, stories, changes that could begin from the ground floor. Literally, what if the company created a new kind of scholarship for employees' children? What if single parents on the cleaning staff got free groceries delivered weekly? What if no one ever had to eat lunch in a supply closet again? The ideas flowed faster than they had in months. He didn't know which ones would stick. But he knew one thing. Lena and Liam had to be part of it. In the staff cafeteria. Lena sat at a corner table during her 10-minute break. She usually avoided the space, feeling out of place among the tech workers with their Bluetooth earbuds and avocado toast. But today she had forgotten her thermos, and the vending machine was broken again. She cradled a small cup of watery tea and looked down at her shoes, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. Just then, Maria, her younger colleague, slid into the seat across from her, chewing a granola bar. You won't believe what I just heard. Lena blinked. What? Someone said the CEO was walking around the loading dock yesterday. The CEO? Lena's heart stuttered. Yeah, like casually, no guards. No badge. Just walking around like a normal person. One of the guards swore it was him. Said he saw him going into the janitor wing. Lena felt her throat tighten. What? Does he look like? Maria pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen to show a photo from a tech magazine. Him. Lena stared at the screen. It was the same man. The same calm eyes. The same gentle voice. She whispered, I think. I talked to him. Maria nearly choked on her granola. You what? I didn't know who he was. I thought he was lost. I told him Liam was just having breakfast. He watched us. Double quotes. Maria leaned in, and he just stood there. Talked to Liam. Said nice things. Didn't even act like he was important. They sat in stunned silence. Maria finally said, maybe that's a good thing. Or maybe he'll think we're misusing company property, Lena said softly. Feeding my son in a back hallway probably breaks a rule. Maria shook her head. Nah, you saw the way he was. He didn't look angry. He looked moved. Lena didn't reply. She wasn't sure what to believe anymore. But deep inside, something had shifted. Like a door had opened in her mind, even if she wasn't ready to walk through it yet. But later that afternoon, a quiet message began moving through the corporate offices. A new internal initiative was being drafted, something about recognizing unseen contributions. Employees buzzed with curiosity. Was it a PR campaign? A bonus program? Or just another email that would get ignored? No one knew that it was inspired. By a sandwich.sundar, meanwhile, walked to the human resources department with purpose. He requested a list of janitorial staff, not their evaluations, not their job logs. Just their names, shift timings, and years of service. The assistant handed it to him with wide eyes. He nodded and walked away. He spent that evening reading every name. Some had been there for over a decade. Others were single parents. One had survived cancer. One was raising a disabled child. All of them had worked in silence while the company. Celebrated engineers. He circled one name, Lena Rosario. Next to it, he scribbled, find a way to honor her without making her uncomfortable. Because respect, he believed, didn't have to be loud. The next day, Lena's cleaning route changed. She was assigned to the executive floor. She had never been there before. The floors sparkled like mirrors. The windows stretched so high she felt like she was floating. And the silence was different here, less busy, more watchful. She moved, quietly, wiping down the glass walls outside a boardroom when the door behind her opened. Miss Rosario? She turned, startled. It was a tall man in a dress shirt with a gentle tone. He wasn't security, not a manager either. Yes? She replied, Mr. Pichai would like to see you. If you have a moment. Lena nearly dropped her cloth. Me? Yes. Just for a short conversation. In his office. Nothing urgent. Her heart began pounding. Had she done something wrong? Was this about the hallway? About Liam? She followed the man through a wide hallway, past doors that looked more like art than entrances, until they reached a corner room with tall windows overlooking the city. "Come in," a familiar voice said. Sundar stood by the window holding a cup of tea. He turned and smiled. "Good morning, Lena." She blinked. "You remember my name?" "Of course," he said. "Please sit." She hesitated, but took the seat across from his desk. Her hands were trembling. "I hope I didn't scare you the other morning," he said. "No, I just didn't know who you were." "That's all right. Sometimes it's nice not being recognized. People act more like themselves." Lena nodded, unsure where the conversation was going. "I wanted to thank you," Sundar said softly. She frowned. "For what?" "For reminding me of something I forgot, that greatness isn't always loud. That sometimes the strongest people are the ones no one sees. That love. The kind you gave your son that morning. That's the kind of strength we should honor more." Lena's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't cried in front of anyone in years. "I wasn't trying to be strong," she whispered. "I was just being a mother." "Exactly," he said. "And that's why it matters." He reached into his desk drawer and slid a folder toward her. "What is this?" she asked. "An invitation," he said. "We're launching a new internal program to support employees like you. Single parents, long-term staff. We want to make sure your children have more opportunities, better access, better futures." She opened the folder. Inside was a certificate with Liam's name on it. It said, "First recipient of the Future Spark." Scholarship. Lena covered her mouth. Her chest felt tight. But why? "Because one day Liam might build something that changes the world," Sundar said. "And if he does, it will be because of you." Silence filled the room. Not awkward, not formal. "Just real." Lena finally whispered. "Thank you." "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Sundar said. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Keep heating him sandwiches with love." And then he smiled. As Lena left the office, still clutching the folder test, her eyes blurred with tears. Maria was waiting for her in the hallway. "What happened?" She whispered. Lena looked at her and said, "He remembered my name." That night, she walked Liam home from school under a golden sunset. She told him about the scholarship, about the man with the kind eyes, about how their morning in a hallway changed everything. But she didn't tell him everything. She didn't say how the world had finally seen her. She didn't say how, for the first time in years, she felt visible. Instead, she just held his hand a little tighter. And as they crossed the street, she whispered to herself, maybe we're not invisible anymore. But she had no idea. Someone else had seen something in Liam too. Something he hadn't shared yet. And that secret was about to turn their world upside down. Asterisk, the spark inside Liam Thrain came down gently that night, drumming against the apartment windows like a soft lullaby. Lena sat on the couch with Liam curled against her side, the warmth of his small body pressing into her ribs. She was still holding the folder Sundar had given her, her fingers tracing the embossed letters again and again. Future Spark Scholarship. The words didn't feel real. Not for someone like her. She stared at the certificate, then at Liam. His head rested on her arm as he drew tiny shapes on a notepad with a stub of a pencil. She watched the way his eyes danced with imagination, how he was lost in his own world. His fingers moved quickly, not just drawing, but sketching something, boxes, buttons, arrows, circuits, lines that looked like code. "What are you working on?" she asked gently. "Just something I saw in school," he said, not looking up. "Mr. Hayes said we can't build it till next year, but I think I can do it now." "Do it now." Liam paused, turned the notepad toward her, and pointed. "A sensor. It helps blind people find their way. I was thinking maybe you could put it in a shoe." Lena blinked. "You made this up?" "Kind of," he said with a small shrug. "But the idea is from real stuff. I just changed it a little." Lena felt her throat tighten. The boy sitting beside her, wearing a shirt from the thrift store and sketching on a paper with a pencil, Too Short to Grip was talking about wearable tech. It wasn't just imagination. It was intuition. She pulled him closer, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "You're going to do amazing things." "I just want to help," he said. "Like you helped me." Her heart cracked open in that moment, and a tear slipped down her cheek. What she didn't know was that someone else had noticed the same thing earlier that week. Someone who wasn't just moved, but intrigued. On the fourth floor of the tech campus, in a lab surrounded by prototypes and tangled cables, a woman named Evelyn Cho sat in her chair, staring at a data sheet on her monitor. She was one of the company's lead engineers in the innovation division, often too intense for meetings, but brilliant at solving impossible problems. The company had asked her to quietly vet the candidates for the new scholarship initiative. A private review, Sundar had said. No grades, no test scores, just potential. But when she opened Liam Rosario's file, she stopped cold. In the notes section were sketches scanned from a school journal. Evelyn looked closer. Crude lines. Messy. Margins. But underneath it, all raw logic. She zoomed in on one sketch. A sonar-based feedback system. Haptic signals to indicate direction. Connected to shoes. She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This wasn't the kind of thing a 7-year-old should be drawing. At least, not without help. Evelyn printed the page and walked it to Sundar's office. "You need to see this," she said, without knocking. Sundar looked up from his desk, saw the sketch, and smiled. "Liam, you already knew?" "His mother gave him half a sandwich while skipping her own meal," Sundar said quietly. "A boy raised with that kind of love. Sometimes he sees the world differently." Evelyn studied him. "This sketch, it's not just cute. It's clever. We've been trying to do something similar in accessibility tech. He doesn't know it yet, but he's onto something." Sundar closed the folder slowly. "Then let's help him grow." 2 days later, Lena was called into a meeting again, this time not in the executive office, but a different room, one filled with light and models and strange machines. Liam was with her, holding her hand tightly. Evelyn met them at the door, crouched to Liam's height, and said, "Hi, I'm Evelyn. I work with the people who build things." "Your sketches are really cool." Liam's eyes widened. "You saw them?" "Yes," she smiled, "and I wanted to show you something." They walked into the lab, and Liam's mouth fell open. There were robotic arms, 3D printers, prototypes of smart devices. Everything shimmered like something out of a sci-fi movie. But one corner of the lab was different, smaller, warmer. A desk, a notepad, colored wires, and a box with Liam's name on it. "We thought maybe you'd want to try building what you drew," Evelyn said. "With some help." Liam looked up at his mom, unsure. Lena could barely speak. Her eyes glistened. "Go on," she whispered. "You can do it." Liam walked over, opened the box, and pulled out a tiny breadboard, sensors and wires. His fingers trembled with excitement. "Can I really try?" He asked. "You're not trying," Evelyn said. "You're building. And we'll build with you." That afternoon, the janitor's son began a journey most kids only dreamed about. Meanwhile, something else was happening. News of the internal initiative had quietly spread through the building. Engineers whispered about a new project involving employees' children. Someone said the CEO had personally chosen a family. Others speculated it was a PR stunt. But no one expected what happened next. In a company-wide meeting, Sundar stood on stage without slides or charts. He simply told a story. He spoke of a morning walk, a mother feeding her son in a service hallway, a sandwich shared out of love, and a sketch by a boy who saw beyond obstacles. "We build for the future," Sundar said. "But sometimes the future is already here, quietly drawing in the margins, waiting to be seen." There was no applause at first, just silence. Then, slowly, the room filled with claps, not polite, but real. In that moment, a seed was planted deep inside the heart of the company. A shift. A realization. Because the janitor and her son had done something no algorithm could. They had reminded everyone why they began building in the first place. Over the next few weeks, Lena's world changed in small ways. Her shifts were adjusted, so she could attend Liam's lab sessions. She was offered training in tech literacy if she wanted it. Her name appeared in a company newsletter, not as a janitor, but as the mother of our first Spark Scholar. She still cleaned floors. She still wore her apron. But now people looked at her differently. With recognition. With respect. One morning, a young engineer named Josh passed her in the hallway and said, "Your son's project is brilliant." "My team is watching it closely." She smiled. "Thank you." "And thank you," he added, "for everything you do here." The words made her chest ache in the best way. She walked into the restroom, leaned against the sink, and breathed. All her life, she had worked silently. But now her silence had become a story. Late one evening, Liam was packing up after a lab session. He looked at Evelyn and asked, "Do you think blind people will really use this?" "One day, yes," she said. "But even if they don't, your idea will lead to others. That's how innovation works." He nodded slowly. "I want to make things that help people like Mama." "You will," she said. But what Liam didn't know was that someone else had started noticing him too. Someone who had once walked away from his own dreams and was now watching Liam with eyes full of something unexpected. Jealousy. In a nearby office, a man named Carter sat watching a lab feed. He was a senior engineer, older than most, respected but bitter. He had worked for the company for 11 years, hoping to lead a major innovation. But in all that time, no one had ever noticed him the way they noticed Liam. He saw the attention Liam was getting, the special visits, the praise. "A janitor's son," he muttered, "getting more spotlight than me." His jaw clenched. And deep inside, something ugly began to grow. Resentment. And he wasn't going to let it sit quietly. Not for long. Asterisk. Cracks beneath the surface. Skies above the city glowed with a soft orange hue, the kind that made glass buildings look like fire in motion. Inside the tech headquarters, the atmosphere had begun to shift. Ever since the announcement of the Future Spark initiative and the quiet rise of Liam Rosario, the janitor's son, something had stirred deep within the walls of the company. Some called it progress, others a distraction. But beneath the polished floors and smiling faces, not everyone was celebrating. In a corner of the 6th floor, away from the sleek labs and busy conference rooms, Carter Wallace stared at his screen in silence. The room around him was dim, filled with the hum of machines and the soft tap of his fingers on a mechanical keyboard. He had spent years building projects that were shelved, innovations that were praised in private but never launched. His name rarely left internal reports. Yet now, the talk of the company, no. The spark of the company was a 7-year-old child with a sketchbook. He leaned back in his chair and watched a video on his screen. It was a short clip from Liam's latest lab session, quietly recorded. From a hallway cam, Liam was explaining a revised idea to Evelyn, animated and fast-talking, his tiny fingers pointing to a small motor circuit. The prototype buzzed to life under his touch, lights blinking in rhythmic patterns. Carter narrowed his eyes. "It's just wiring," he muttered. "I built better sensors in college." But no one had clapped for Carter. No one had stood on stage and said his name. What burned him most wasn't the boy. It was what the boy represented. Recognition, approval, a shift of focus away from people like him and toward something he couldn't control. And what made it worse? He couldn't say any of this out loud without sounding bitter, without sounding like the very thing he feared becoming. Obsolete. But Carter was not a man to be forgotten. And now he had a plan. Down in the lab, Liam was finishing another long day of exploration. He had learned how to test circuits, calibrate sensors, and even use a simplified coding tool to program motion detection. Evelyn stood beside him, impressed by how fast he picked things up. "You got a natural instinct for this," she said, kneeling beside him. Liam smiled. "It's fun. You know, when I was your age, I used to take apart old radios," she said, laughing. "My mom got so mad. I never put them back together, right?" My mama says she'd get mad if I broke the vacuum. He grinned. They both laughed as they packed up for the day. Sundar entered the lab quietly, carrying something in a brown envelope. Hey, Liam, he said softly. Liam turned around, eyes lighting up. Hi, Mr. Sundar. I have something for you. He handed Liam the envelope. Inside was a letter with a seal from a renowned science academy. It was an invitation. Liam had been nominated to attend a junior innovation camp for gifted students. All expenses paid. Lena, who had just arrived to pick him up, stared at the letter in disbelief. This can't be real, she whispered. It's very real, Sundar replied. His ideas have caught the attention of more people than just us. They want to see what he can do. Liam looked up at his mom, unsure. Do I have to go? Only if you want to, Sundar said. No pressure. But you deserve to know how far your spark can reach. Lena knelt beside her son, holding his hands. Whatever you decide. I'm proud of you, Liam nodded slowly. Can Mama come too? Sundar smiled. We'll make sure she can. But not far from that happy moment, Carter Wallace had already made his move. He had access to a restricted file. Nothing illegal, just a quiet bending of rules. He downloaded a prototype draft from Liam's project log. Then, using his own engineering resources, he built a refined version of it, sleeker, faster, using advanced components Liam hadn't touched yet. His goal wasn't to steal. Not exactly that. His plan was to enhance the project, present it to a senior panel anonymously, and let them discover it. Then, after the buzz grew, he would reveal that he had made it based on public ideas and spin the story to suggest Liam was just a child playing with toys. He told himself it wasn't cruel. It was strategy, but it was more than that. It was desperation. Week later, Lena was walking down the hallway toward the executive wing when a young intern approached her. Miss Rosario? Yes, double quotes. Yes? Have you seen the announcement? What announcement? One of the senior engineers just won a special innovation award for a wearable aid for the visually impaired. Sounds a lot like Liam's project. Lena's heart dropped. Who? Carter Wallace. Her stomach twisted. She ran to the lab, clutching her apron. She burst through the doors and found Evelyn and Sundar already standing over a screen. Liam sat on a stool, confused, watching a replay of the award ceremony. On the screen, Carter stood behind a podium, holding the very device Liam had built, only now it looked sleeker, commercial-ready. He spoke confidently. This idea was inspired by open conversations and concepts floating around our company, he said. Sometimes inspiration comes from unlikely sources, but execution is everything. Lena's voice cracked. He stole it. Evelyn clenched her fists. He didn't just steal. He waited until Liam had done all the groundwork, and then took it over the finish line. Sundar's face darkened. What do we do? Lena asked. He looked at Liam, who was quiet. Still, Liam, Sundar said gently. Are you okay? Liam nodded slowly. He changed the design. But the idea is still mine, right? Absolutely, Sundar said. You created it. Then it doesn't matter, Liam whispered. He can say what he wants. But I'll build something better. Those words so calm, so sure made Lena's heart crack all over again. This time, with pride, Sundar took action immediately. He scheduled a closed-door meeting with the board, brought proof of timeline logs, lab footage, and expert testimony from Evelyn Dow, but he didn't just want justice. He wanted change. If we reward people for stealing light from others, he said, during the meeting, then we don't deserve to call ourselves innovators. We must protect the sparks, especially the ones who burn quietly. The board agreed. Carter was removed from the special committee, and his award was revoked. He was reassigned to a role with no innovation access until further review. He didn't protest. He just walked out of the building, a quiet fury in his eyes, but even then, Sundar knew this wouldn't be the last time Liam would face something like this. Genius always. Attracts envy. And Liam's spark was only just beginning to glow. Later that evening, As the sun set over the rooftops, Lena and Liam sat together on a park bench near their apartment. The air smelled of fresh grass. Children played in the distance. It was a rare, quiet moment. "Mama," Liam said, "do you think he was mad at me?" "Who?" "The man who copied me," Lena sighed. "Maybe, or maybe he was scared." "Why?" "Scared? Because sometimes when people see something bright in someone else, they forget they can shine too." Liam was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm going to build something so helpful. No one can ignore it." "Not even people like him?" She smiled and brushed his hair back. "I believe you." But even as they sat in peace, somewhere deep in the city, Carter Wallace sat in a dark apartment, staring at an email chain. He had friends, old connections, and a growing desire to prove he was better. He wasn't done yet, and the next move he made would shake everything. Asterisk shadows and the like. Days that followed were filled with a strange silence. Not the peaceful kind that comes with resolution, but the kind that wraps itself around people like fog, thick, quiet, and hard to trust. At the office, people talked in hushed voices. Janitors whispered in storage rooms, unsure whether to feel inspired or nervous. Engineers exchanged glances when passing Liam in the hallway. Some offered kind words. Others said nothing. The building had been changed not by a product, but by a boy. And while the surface remained calm, something much darker was brewing beneath. Carter Wallace was no longer in the building, but his presence lingered like a bitter aftertaste. The way he had tried to take Liam's idea and claim it as his own left an unspoken scar across departments. Some sympathized. Others didn't care. But Carter? He hadn't disappeared. He was preparing something bigger, something that would strike. Not just Liam, but Sundar. In a quiet meeting room on the other side of the city, Carter sat with a man in a tailored suit. The lights were dim. Coffee sat untouched on the table between them. "You're telling me the CEO of one of the largest companies in the world is building his entire campaign on the back of a child?" The suited man asked. Carter leaned forward, his voice measured. "I'm telling you that he's made that child the symbol of the company's innovation future. And if someone were to question the ethics of that, it could get messy." "How messy?" "Enough to make the board nervous." The man smirked. "And what do you want?" Carter's eyes hardened. "I want my name back. And I want both of them off that pedestal." The man tapped his fingers. "Then we'll need a story. Something the public won't ignore. And something no one can unprove." Carter nodded. It had begun. 2 weeks later. An anonymous blog post went live under the title, "The Real Story Behind the Janitor's Son and the $1 billion Stage." It was long, cleverly worded, filled with insinuations and loaded phrases. It painted Sundar as a manipulator, using a poor child to craft a redemption arc for the company. It questioned how a 7-year-old could be credited with complex ideas. It suggested the project was heavily guided by engineers behind the scenes, turning Liam into nothing more than a puppet. It didn't accuse. It implied, and that was worse. Within hours, it went viral. Tech journalists picked it up. Twitter debates exploded. News outlets ran segments with CEO using child for clout and inspiration or exploitation. Sundar watched the storm rise from his office. The calm he'd fought so hard to protect was now unraveling. His phone buzzed nonstop. His assistants forwarded meeting requests. Legal teams advised silence. PR teams begged for a statement. But Sundar didn't want a prepared speech. He wanted to look into the heart of this and find the truth, because this wasn't about headlines. This was about a boy and a mother and an idea born in love now being twisted into spectacle. Lena saw the headlines on a bus stop screen. She froze mid-step, Liam's hand in hers. His face was on the display. Someone had used a photo from a lab day, and under it were the words, "innovation or illusion." She grabbed Liam and turned away quickly. Inside, her chest trembled. She had spent so many years being unseen. Now that she was visible, it felt like every eye carried judgment. That night, she didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't speak much. She stared at her hands that had scrubbed floors, changed diapers, folded laundry until her fingers cracked. Now the world was calling her a liar's mother. Liam sat quietly at the table, piecing together wires for a small project. "Mama," he said finally, "did I do something wrong?" Her voice broke. "No, baby, you did everything right." "Then why are people mad?" She knelt in front of him, placed her hands on his cheeks. "Because some people don't understand what's real unless it comes wrapped in fame or fancy suits. But your heart, your mind, those are real." He nodded, but the weight of confusion lingered in his eyes. The next day, Sundar made a decision. He would not fight back with statements. Not with lawyers. Not with corporate spin. He would walk straight into the heart of the storm. He called a press conference. The media flooded the building. Reporters packed the auditorium like vultures circling a story. Lena sat backstage, holding Liam close. She was pale, exhausted, her nerves stretched thin. "You don't have to do this," Sundar told them. "Yes, we do," Lena replied. "They need to see him. They need to hear the truth." When Sundar walked onto the stage, the room fell silent. Didn't open with a speech. He didn't read from paper. He simply looked into the crowd and said, "You've all heard a story. Now it's time to meet the boy behind it." He stepped aside and let Liam walk forward. The crowd blinked at a tiny boy holding a prototype in his trembling hands. Liam stood behind the podium, cleared his throat, and spoke. "This is something I made to help blind people feel where to go. It uses vibrations. I drew it first, then I learned how to build it. I didn't steal it. I didn't fake it. My mom gave me her lunch so I could think better. I'm just trying to help people. That's all." The silence was deafening. Then Lena stepped beside him and said, "I used to clean this building at night thinking no one saw us. Now you do. We didn't ask for fame. We didn't ask to be a story. We just asked for a chance." Somewhere, the middle rows, a journalist wiped her eyes. The room slowly filled with applause. Not because it was rehearsed, but because it was human. The following week, a new article replaced the smear. This one titled, "A Janitor. Her son and the courage to keep building." It went deeper than gossip. It told their whole story from the sandwich in the hallway to the invention in the lab. It interviewed Evelyn, who confirmed Liam's original sketches. It quoted engineers who'd seen his progress. It celebrated not just the boy's mind, but the mother's sacrifice. And in the end, it reminded the world what tech should really be about, solving human problems with human hearts. But just when things began to settle, another message appeared. This time not public. Emails sent directly to sundar.anonymous. Just a few words. "If you think that's the last fire you'll face, think again. There are others watching, and they don't believe in second chances." Sundar stared at the screen, his jaw tight. The war wasn't over, and the next battle would come from a place no one expected. The gift no one expected had been 3 weeks since the storm passed. Since the press conference. Since Liam stood in front of flashing lights and told the world the truth, the building had returned to its usual rhythm, busy hands tapping keyboards, early morning lattes steaming under conference lights, emails flying like birds through the cloud. But beneath that familiar buzz, something fundamental had changed. It was hard to explain. A gentler way people greeted the janitorial staff, the way engineers left thank you notes at the cleaning stations. A softness that wasn't policy, wasn't instruction, just awareness. Sundar felt it everywhere. Like a thread had been rewoven into the fabric of the company. Like something human had been restored. But even as the outside world began to move, he hadn't forgotten the final message he'd received. "If you think that's the last fire you'll face, think again." He still didn't know who sent it. No signature, no traceable server. But he had a guess. And more importantly, he wasn't afraid. Not anymore, because he had seen firsthand what resilience looked like. It looked like a mother giving away her last sandwich. It looked like a child using broken pencils to dream up solutions for the blind. And it looked like a janitor and her son walking into a storm and walking out stronger. Lena was in the break room folding a fresh stack of microfiber cloths when she received a phone call. Hello? Ms. Rosario, this is Sarah from the White House liaison office. Lena nearly dropped the cloth. What?